Hello and welcome to the Academy's Developing Practice podcast. This is the official trailer for the podcast series. My name is Matthew Davis. I'm one of the Organisational Developers working within the Academy, and with me is...
My name's Alex Owen and I'm one of the Academic Developers working in the Academy.
So I think what we're going to do with this trailer is just discuss why we were interested in creating a podcast from the Academy's point of view. So I'll start with that. I suppose my main thing, and this has been sort of going around in my head for probably 18 months now, but I only really had any impetus to do it when you started, Alex. So that was really great. So the things that were going around in my head was there's a lot of tribal knowledge in our university. There's people who've been here for a while, and there's people who do amazing things across the board. So in particular, I'm thinking about professional services now for sort of my remit in organisational development. They do things, they find ways around systems, they find ways of working which are actually really interesting. So I wanted to have a medium, a way of getting those stories out there. So that's one of my sort of key drivers to start producing content in this manner. Obviously podcasts are huge. I listen to different podcasts each and every day. In fact, I've got so many podcasts on my Spotify that I can't listen to them all. There's absolutely no way I can possibly do it. But that is one of the main ways that I learn at the moment. It's obviously very passive, but due to my commute here to Liverpool, I've got plenty of time to sort of soak those things in and regurgitate it in my own mind before I start sort of embedding that learning. So, Alex, what are some of your reasons?
Well, I've just started at the university, so I started on July the 1st of 2019. So I've got a lot less experience of this university than you have, Matt. But in terms of reflecting on my past experience, previously I worked at a different institution where I was very aware in my role as a head of department that lots of different people were doing brilliant things in terms of learning and teaching practice across the university. But because we were all so busy, we just got on and did it. And it was really hard to... Well, it was through those kind of informal conversations that I heard about it. There wasn't really any way of sharing across the institution what people were doing and then taking that and reflecting on it. And that's something that my previous institution thought about and developed in terms of how do we share this good practice with colleagues in different disciplines across the university. So then me arriving here at the University of Liverpool and taking on this role as an academic developer, working with academics in terms of helping them to think through their practices in terms of their learning and teaching, and also hearing some of the great stuff that people are doing. How do we get that message out there? How do we support colleagues to hear what other people are doing, reflect on that critically in terms of their own practice, and then apply it to their future engagement with students or design in terms of their curriculum, their pedagogy, etc. So I've never been involved in a podcast before, but similar to you, Matt, in that on my commute I also listen to podcasts, and I really, really enjoy them in terms of just hearing different people's stories of what's going on in their lives, reflecting on that personally, and then trying to think about what that means to me and how I could change my life as a result. So I think they're really, really powerful. I think they're great because they're short, you can listen to them on a commute, and they just trigger questions, reflections in a way that once we get into the office, things are happening quickly, we're moving quickly, we're busy, we don't really have that time for reflection maybe.
And you're not in that mindset either, are you? As soon as you come to work, I don't find I can develop in office time.
Yeah.
Like I can learn things on the fly that I need to put into action straight away.
Yeah.
But I can't reflect in office time.
No.
My best reflection is done either on the train or when I'm ironing my shirts ready for on a Sunday, ready for Monday.
Yeah, and I think it's the same, you know, for academics as well. Of each year on year, we're supposed to develop our practice, our modules that we're teaching. We get student evaluation. We engage in formalised evaluation. However, actually thinking about my personal practice and how I can develop that, we often don't have space to do that. So I think this is just, the podcast's a really nice way of hearing some of the great stuff that people are doing, celebrating those stories, and sharing them with colleagues across the institution.
And wider, maybe. Who knows who will listen to this?
Absolutely.
Could have an audience across the globe, for all we know.
Yeah.
I think that there's a couple of years ago, having this thing around my head around sharing stories, sharing best practice, I was leaning towards technology. So I was thinking, at the time I was thinking Slack. I was thinking institutional Slack, communities, digital communities of practice. Could I do it through the VLE? Do I need a new system? But I think my thinking there was slightly flawed, because it was all about the people themselves being willing to share their practice on a system. Mm-hmm. And we haven't got time for that, have we? I mean, I could share plenty of things that I do that I think could potentially save people time, energy, so on. And I'm sure there's plenty of things where I could save my own time. But I was going down the technology route, and that obviously said, as I was just saying, it relies on people sharing themselves. Whereas a podcast you're taking away a barrier, because all you're doing is inviting somebody in for conversation. And so hopefully our conversations will come across as conversations and not interrogations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that probably shows the difference between yourself and me. So you understand technology, your brain goes straight to the technology. For me, the reason I want to do this is, again, about a year and a half ago, I was privileged to actually lead a panel discussion with some key women leaders in HE, and for me that was one of the highlights of my year. And it's basically because I'm nosy. I love hearing people's stories, people's experiences, hearing about where they've come from and how they've got to where they are. So for me, I just wanted to find a way of finding out more about people, because I want to know about people, about their experiences. Because I'm nosy, but also because, you know, what can I learn from people's experience?
Exactly, and what can you share of them?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are our plans for the podcast? Well, we're hoping to launch the podcast on the 16th of Jan, which coincides with
the PEDRES, Pedagogical Research Conference at the University of Liverpool.
Brilliant. From then on, we will be releasing one episode a week. For the first season, at least, which we think we're going to have around 10 episodes. Mm-hmm. So all that's left to say is that if you want to listen more, then please subscribe. We're going to be putting this podcast out on all the usual channels, Spotify, iTunes, etc. One thing that you can really do for us if you do subscribe is to please rate our podcast and review it as well. That really helps the analytics behind iTunes and gets our podcast noticed. It'll help us in the rankings, and ultimately it will lead to more people listening to it and hopefully getting something from it.
Brilliant. So we really do want this to be a developmental supportive project. So please do feedback to us in terms of the episodes, what you thought about what people said, anything that you're doing that's related that we could share with our listeners as well. We also want to, at the off the back of each episode, we want to collate some resources that might support you in terms of furthering your practice and thinking about what our colleague that we've talked to has reflected on in their podcast. So to find these resources, you can go to the University of Liverpool website, that's liverpool.ac.uk/the Academy. And on there's a tab which you can click on for the podcast, and that will have lots of different links, journal papers, resources to support your thinking about the aspect of professional services or academic practice that we've been reflecting on.
Okay, well that's enough for a trailer, I think. Thank you very much for listening, and like I said, please subscribe.